I can't do this alone, Amelia whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning, as she hugged her knees to her chest in the corner of the dimly lit safe house. The walls were painted a muted gray, and the faint glow from the city lights outside the tall windows cast soft streaks across the wooden floors, highlighting the scattered papers and small belongings she had hastily packed. Her dark hair fell into her face, damp from a quick wipe of tears she hadn't bothered to hide, and her hands trembled slightly, leaving faint impressions in the cotton of her long-sleeved sweater. She had been here for just over a week, and already the weight of isolation, the relentless pressure from the messages she had received on her phone, and the gnawing uncertainty of what might come next had begun to crush her. Amelia's eyes darted toward the small kitchenette where a mug of tea had cooled long ago, steam no longer rising from the dark liquid, yet she could still smell the faint aroma of chamomile mingling with the lingering scent of vanilla candles she had lit earlier, trying to create a semblance of comfort. The soft ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual, each tick marking time that she couldn't reclaim, a reminder that each minute was another stretch of solitude and fear. The safe house was meant to be a refuge, a place where the world outside wouldn't reach her, yet here she was, tears streaming silently down her cheeks, feeling the sharp sting of vulnerability that came from being truly alone. Her gaze wandered to the small stack of letters she had tucked into the corner, letters she had written to friends who might never receive them. Words of worry and fragmented hope folded neatly into envelopes that smelled faintly of lavender. Amelia's mind raced with memories of past hardships, moments when she had been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated, each recollection echoing in the empty rooms around her. She breathed deeply, trying to center herself, letting the sound of her own heartbeat become a rhythm to cling to, a reminder that she was still present, still capable of enduring. Outside, the wind brushed against the side of the building, carrying the distant hum of traffic from the streets of Seoul, blending with the faint murmur of pedestrians and the occasional chirp of a night bird, sounds she could neither control nor predict, yet somehow grounded her in reality. Amelia's fingers traced the outline of the windowsill, smooth and cool under her touch, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the weight of the day, the tension in her shoulders, and the knot of anxiety in her stomach. The soft fabric of her sweater felt like the only shield she had against a world that had been unkind, a world that had demanded more than she could give, and yet left her questioning whether she was enough. In that quiet space, surrounded by minimalistic furniture and the faint scent of her small attempts at domestic order, Amelia felt the tension of suppressed emotion, the raw vulnerability of someone who had learned to mask strength with compliance. And as the clock ticked onward, she whispered once more, almost inaudibly, to no one in particular, "I just need someone to understand." The words hanging in the air, fragile and fleeting, a silent plea that the night might carry to ears that could offer a sliver of reprieve from the relentless weight of solitude. Amelia took a slow, steadying breath and pushed herself off the corner where she had been sitting, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear as she moved toward the small window that overlooked the quiet streets of Seoul. The city lights glimmered like distant stars, each one a reminder of life continuing beyond the safe house, life that she had been momentarily removed from as she tried to navigate the tension and uncertainty that had built up over the past week. Her hands smoothed the surface of the windowsill, tracing the faint grooves in the painted wood as she contemplated the series of events that had led her here. She remembered the moment she had first arrived, stepping through the modest front door of the safe house with nothing more than a small suitcase and a head full of instructions, told to stay out of sight and avoid unnecessary interaction. Her employer had been clear: keep a low profile, follow the rules, and your safety is paramount. But even the most carefully laid plans could not prevent the undercurrent of stress that had begun to creep into her mind. Amelia's thoughts drifted to the men who had been sending messages, reminders that even in a place meant for refuge, control and intimidation could reach her, and the tiny, insistent feeling of helplessness she had been fighting to suppress each day. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchenette punctuated the quiet, and she poured herself a fresh cup of tea, the steam curling upward in thin ribbons, carrying the familiar scent of chamomile that offered a small measure of comfort. She cradled the warm cup between her hands, letting the heat seep through her fingers and into her chest, a reminder that she was still present and capable of grounding herself in the moment. Amelia walked slowly through the living area, her eyes taking in the carefully arranged furniture and the muted tones of the walls, recognizing the effort that had been made to make this place a sanctuary, even if it did not always feel like one. She allowed herself a moment to look at the small notes she had left scattered around, reminders of daily tasks and brief messages to herself, affirmations she repeated to maintain a sense of control and purpose. Each note was a silent declaration that she would not let fear dominate her, that she could navigate this space and the uncertainties it held. Her mind lingered on the people she had left behind, friends and family who would not understand why she had come to Seoul, who would worry for her safety, and she felt a wave of longing for connection that the safe house, no matter how secure, could not fully satisfy. As she moved toward the modest bedroom at the back of the house, she paused at the doorway, taking in the simplicity of the space, the neatly made bed, the small desk with a single lamp casting a warm glow across scattered documents, and the window that framed the city skyline like a living painting. Amelia set her tea down and sat on the edge of the bed, fingers interlacing as she attempted to center her thoughts and reconcile the emotions swirling within her. She reviewed the instructions she had been given once more, going over contingencies, safety measures, and the protocol for emergencies, reinforcing the structure that had been her anchor. The weight of responsibility and the unfamiliarity of the city pressed against her, yet she reminded herself that she had managed challenges before and could continue to do so. The quiet of the safe house offered both solace and pressure, a delicate balance that required focus, patience, and a keen awareness of her surroundings. Amelia's gaze fell on the small collection of personal items she had unpacked, each chosen carefully to bring a sense of normalcy and familiarity amidst the controlled environment. She allowed herself a moment to touch a photograph of her family tucked into a small frame, letting the image anchor her to her own sense of identity and resolve. The gentle ticking of the wall clock continued its rhythm, and Amelia let the sound blend with her breathing, creating a subtle meditation that offered clarity and calm. Every sound, every light, every familiar object reinforced her awareness that despite the isolation, she remained vigilant, thoughtful, and capable. She whispered quietly to herself, a soft affirmation that carried through the empty rooms. "I can handle this. I am strong enough to endure." The words were a quiet promise, a mantra to carry her through the tension and uncertainty of the hours ahead, a reminder that she was present, aware, and prepared to face whatever challenges the safe house and the city beyond might present. Amelia's attention shifted to the faint creak of the front door as a soft click echoed through the hallway, a sound that was almost imperceptible yet instantly sharpened her senses. The city lights outside continued to glow through the tall windows, casting long, thin shadows across the floor, and she felt the familiar surge of alertness that came whenever the unknown approached. Her heart rate quickened, not in fear, but in anticipation, as she straightened her posture and let her hands rest lightly on the edge of the small desk, tracing the grain of the wood with her fingertips. She remembered the briefings she had received when she first arrived at the safe house, instructions carefully detailing how to remain calm and aware at all times, how to read subtle signs of presence and intention, and she silently assessed the environment with practiced vigilance. The faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock provided a rhythmic backdrop, grounding her focus as she scanned the living space from corner to corner, taking note of the placement of furniture, the soft rug underfoot, and the minimalistic decorations that created both warmth and structure in the otherwise stark environment. Amelia's eyes lingered on the small notes she had taped near the lamp, reminders of tasks and gentle affirmations she had written for herself to maintain a sense of control, each one a tether to her own resolve and composure. She shifted slightly, listening to the subtle sounds from the street below, the occasional murmur of passing pedestrians, the distant engine hum, each element weaving into the ambient tapestry that filled the apartment with life beyond her temporary sanctuary. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the day she had arrived, the nervous steps up the narrow staircase, the careful inspection of the rooms by the agent who had briefed her, and the faint scent of polished wood mingled with the distant aroma of brewed coffee from a neighboring apartment, grounding her memory in the tangible textures of the moment. Amelia's fingers brushed against the soft fabric of her sweater as she settled back into a chair by the window, pulling her knees slightly closer, feeling the warmth of the teacup she had left beside her and allowing herself to absorb the silence that had settled over the house. She reflected on the instructions to remain vigilant yet calm, the emphasis on observation over reaction, and she mentally rehearsed scenarios where patience, clarity, and quiet attentiveness could guide her through moments of uncertainty. Her gaze drifted to the small bookshelf, neatly organized with a few well-worn novels, a single photo frame capturing a memory of home, and the careful arrangement of her personal belongings, each item selected to preserve a sense of normalcy and personal identity amidst the temporary constraints of the safe house. The soft rustle of the curtains as a breeze passed through a slightly open window reminded her that even in controlled spaces, elements of the external world could intrude unexpectedly, and she took a measured breath to center herself, feeling the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat as a steady anchor. Amelia's mind worked quietly, cataloging details, noting textures, sounds, and the subtle changes in light, each observation sharpening her awareness and reinforcing her sense of preparedness. She whispered softly to herself, a private mantra to reinforce composure and readiness, letting the words flow in harmony with the quiet environment. I am present. I notice. I am prepared. The weight of solitude pressed against her in subtle waves, yet with each breath she felt a growing steadiness, a renewed focus that reminded her that vigilance, awareness, and patience were her greatest allies in navigating the intricate and delicate space of the safe house and soul, a place designed to protect, yet demanding constant attentiveness to preserve that very security. The quiet of the safe house was suddenly interrupted by the subtle sound of her phone buzzing softly on the small wooden table near the door, a vibration that seemed louder than it should have been in the stillness of the room. Amelia's eyes flicked toward the device, hesitation pausing her movement as she considered whether to check it immediately or let it lie, allowing herself a moment of calm before facing whatever message awaited her. She reached slowly, lifting the phone to see the screen illuminated with a message that carried both urgency and a hint of unease. The words typed in short, clipped sentences that suggested someone was monitoring the situation closely and needed her attention. She read them carefully, parsing each word, the details painting a picture of concern and subtle warning, yet no explicit threat was present, only the sense that she needed to remain aware and measured in her response. Amelia set the phone back down, her fingers lingering on the smooth surface for a moment. As she considered the implications of what she had just read, the quiet tension coiling in her chest like a spring that could uncoil at any instant. She walked to the corner of the room where a small desk lamp provided a warm pool of light, illuminating the notes she had taken over the past few days, each one a reminder of protocols, contingency plans, and safe actions that she could take should the unexpected arise. Her eyes scanned the handwritten words, the careful lines and bullet points she had organized to maintain clarity, and she felt a small sense of reassurance knowing that preparation was on her side, even as uncertainty lingered in the air. Outside the window, the city remained quiet but alive, the distant glow of neon signs reflecting off the streets and casting soft reflections onto the walls inside the safe house, a constant reminder of the world moving forward while she remained in a suspended, careful state of vigilance. Amelia took a deep breath, letting the aroma of the tea she had poured earlier fill her senses once more, grounding her with the familiar and comforting scent. As she thought through her next steps, she moved slowly around the living area, making mental notes of her position relative to the exits, the furniture, and the vantage points that offered clear views of the entrances, reinforcing a sense of security through awareness. Her gaze fell on the small personal touches she had added, photographs of family and friends, a few books stacked neatly on a shelf, each one a small tether to her life outside this temporary sanctuary, a reminder that she carried connections and purpose even in solitude. Amelia adjusted the folds of her sweater, the soft fabric comforting against her skin as she leaned slightly forward to read a passage in one of the books she had chosen to occupy her mind with focus and clarity, letting the words take her away from the immediate tension and into a rhythm of calm reflection. The gentle hum of the air conditioning blended with the distant murmur of the city, creating a backdrop that was both constant and stabilizing, allowing her to center her thoughts and maintain a clear head as she continued to assess the room, her movements deliberate and measured, each step reinforcing her attentiveness. She paused at the kitchen area, noting the small details, the placement of utensils and containers, the subtle arrangement that made the space functional while remaining uncluttered, a visual reminder that order could coexist with uncertainty if approached carefully. Amelia took another sip of her tea, letting the warmth fill her chest, and as she did, she felt a renewed sense of focus, a calm determination settling over her as she prepared for whatever might come next in the quiet rhythm of the safe house, ready to respond with careful attention, measured thought, and a composed presence that carried her through the lingering tension of the evening. Amelia drew a slow breath and let it out evenly, focusing on the subtle rhythm of her heartbeat as she stood in the living area, the warm glow from the desk lamp casting soft light across the polished wood floors and the neatly arranged furniture. The city outside remained a quiet, distant hum, the faint neon glow reflecting off the windows and stretching into the room like gentle streaks of light, and Amelia allowed herself a brief moment to appreciate the calm, however temporary it might be. Her gaze moved to the small collection of personal items she had brought, photographs tucked carefully into frames, a few books stacked with precision, each one a touchstone to her life before arriving at the safe house, and she felt a small sense of grounding in the familiarity they offered. Amelia's fingers traced the edges of the photographs as she walked slowly toward the kitchen area, her footsteps silent against the soft rug, and she reflected on the careful routines she had established to maintain both her presence of mind and the order of her temporary home. The kettle on the counter had cooled since her last tea, and the faint aroma of chamomile lingered in the air, mingling with the subtle scent of clean linens and polished surfaces, creating an environment that was both secure and nurturing. She set her hands lightly on the edge of the counter and considered the series of messages she had received earlier, the clipped sentences urging awareness and caution, and she mentally rehearsed the steps she would take to ensure preparedness without allowing anxiety to dominate her thoughts. Amelia's eyes moved to the window once more, the city skyline a mosaic of lights stretching into the distance, each building a silent witness to the life unfolding beyond the confines of her safe house. She let her thoughts drift briefly to her family and friends, remembering the advice and encouragement they had offered before she departed, and she felt a mixture of longing and reassurance, knowing that even in solitude she was not entirely alone. Returning her attention to the interior, Amelia adjusted the placement of a small stack of notes on the desk, reminders of tasks and affirmations she had written to keep herself focused, each one a tangible representation of her intent to remain vigilant and composed. She moved carefully to the small reading nook near the window, settling into the chair and letting her hands rest in her lap as she allowed herself to observe the room with meticulous attention, noting the arrangement of furniture, the positioning of light sources, and the subtle details that could provide both comfort and orientation. The ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the air conditioning became a rhythmic backdrop, each sound anchoring her presence and sharpening her awareness. Amelia's breathing remained steady as she leaned slightly forward, observing the room and reviewing the protocols she had internalized, imagining scenarios and responses in quiet rehearsal, each movement and thought a deliberate exercise in maintaining calm and clarity. The gentle folds of her sweater provided a subtle comfort against the cool air, and she sipped slowly from her tea, letting the warmth spread through her chest, a quiet ritual that reminded her of the normalcy she could cultivate even in this controlled space. Her attention shifted to the corners of the room, observing the interplay of light and shadow, noting the subtle textures of walls, rugs, and furniture, and reinforcing her sense of preparedness and focus. Amelia's thoughts circled back to the importance of patience, observation, and measured response, and she whispered softly to herself, "I remain aware. I stay calm. I am ready." The words threading through the quiet atmosphere, a mantra grounding her as she continued to navigate the intricate balance of vigilance and calm within the safe house. Amelia heard the soft, deliberate click of the front door unlocking, a sound that made her pulse quicken in a mixture of alertness and curiosity, and she turned her head slowly toward the entrance, taking in the subtle shift in shadows that indicated someone had entered. The city beyond the windows remained a distant canvas of muted lights, each one a silent witness to the activity inside the safe house, and Amelia felt the familiar tightening in her chest as she anticipated the presence she had been subconsciously expecting throughout the evening. Her dark eyes scanned the corridor, noting the subtle details of the hallway, the way the light from the desk lamp fell across the walls, and the gentle reflection off the polished floors, each element feeding her awareness as she adjusted her stance slightly, grounding herself against the rise of tension. She remained perfectly still, her fingers lightly resting on the edge of the chair, tracing the smooth finish of the wood, and allowed herself to breathe slowly, letting the warmth of the tea still cradled on the small table near the window seep into her awareness, providing a calm anchor. The sound of measured footsteps drew closer, and Amelia's senses sharpened, the familiar rhythm of preparedness she had cultivated over the past days guiding her perception, every creak of the floorboards, every subtle echo, interpreted with careful attention. She could feel a shift in the energy of the room, a presence that commanded observation, not through intimidation, but through the quiet, deliberate assurance that comes from authority and experience. Her eyes followed a shadow stretching along the walls, and she noted the subtle scent of cologne entering the space, a rich and muted aroma that suggested sophistication and control, yet carried no threat, only the unmistakable presence of someone observant and composed. Amelia's thoughts raced briefly to the protocol she had reviewed, the mental rehearsal of possible scenarios, and she allowed herself to recognize the convergence of patience, vigilance, and situational awareness that had led her to this exact moment. She stepped lightly toward the window, letting the soft city lights guide her movement, and settled into a poised stance, observing the figure who had entered with a measured calm that contrasted the tension she had been managing alone. The room felt both alive and suspended in time, the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the distant city noise forming a stable auditory backdrop as she watched, noting posture, movement, and subtle cues that spoke louder than words. Amelia's heart slowed slightly as she recognized the deliberate, careful steps and the quiet observation, a presence that indicated both understanding and assessment, a silent acknowledgement of her preparedness. She allowed her attention to scan the room in detail once more, noting the placement of furniture, the ambient light, and the personal items she had arranged to maintain a sense of normalcy and calm, each element reinforcing the structure she had created. Her eyes lifted to meet the figure's gaze, and she felt the quiet recognition of composure and awareness mirrored in the subtle nod and careful stance, a silent exchange that conveyed respect, understanding, and the acknowledgement of presence without a single word spoken. Amelia's fingers brushed the edge of the chair once more, grounding herself in the tactile sensation, and she breathed deeply, letting the calm clarity of preparedness fill the space, confident in her ability to maintain composure, awareness, and focus in the shared quiet of the safe house as the evening continued to unfold. Amelia felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere as a soft click echoed from the corridor, signaling the movement of someone she had not anticipated, and her body responded instinctively, a careful tightening of posture that reflected both vigilance and curiosity. The city outside continued its muted rhythm, the distant sounds of traffic blending with the occasional hum of neon signage and the faint murmur of pedestrians, all creating a backdrop that contrasted with the concentrated stillness of the safe house interior. She moved slightly, letting her fingers brush the edge of the desk as she oriented herself, noting the subtle differences in light and shadow that indicated the precise placement of the approaching presence. The subtle fragrance that had permeated the room, a mixture of chamomile and the faint scent of polished wood, seemed to deepen, giving Amelia a heightened sense of awareness as she processed the change in environment. Her eyes flicked toward the window, the city lights reflecting softly across the room, and she allowed herself a brief assessment of the space, noting how the arrangement of furniture, the placement of personal items, and the distribution of light and shadow could inform her understanding of the current dynamics. Amelia's mind raced with possibilities, carefully running through each scenario she had rehearsed in her quiet moments alone, each step deliberate, measured, and informed by the disciplined awareness she had cultivated. The soft ticking of the wall clock and the gentle hum of the air conditioning formed a steady, grounding rhythm that allowed her to maintain focus even as subtle signals of presence intensified her attention. She adjusted her position near the chair, ensuring a clear view of the entrance while keeping her movements minimal and composed, a silent assertion of readiness and observation. Amelia's gaze fell on the small stack of notes she had placed near the lamp, reminders of procedures, affirmations, and contingency steps, each one reinforcing her structured approach to the environment, and she allowed herself a moment to internalize the calm and clarity they represented. Her breathing remained slow and measured, a conscious effort to align body and mind in preparation for the unknown, and she noted the subtle details of the space around her, from the texture of the rug underfoot to the gentle angles of light across the walls, each element reinforcing her situational awareness. A faint rustle of fabric indicated movement, and Amelia's eyes tracked the source, perceiving not threat but deliberate, measured presence, the careful pace of someone assessing the space without overt intrusion. She recognized in that movement a quiet authority, a presence that balanced observation with patience, and she allowed herself to feel a cautious trust forming, tempered by awareness and the disciplined focus that had guided her. Since arriving at the safe house, Amelia shifted slightly to accommodate a clear line of sight across the room, fingers brushing lightly along the back of the chair, grounding herself, and she noted with subtle relief that the tension in the space carried no immediate danger, only the quiet, deliberate watchfulness of another who understood presence, space, and observation. Her posture relaxed just enough to release some of the held intensity, yet her senses remained alert, attuned to the faintest changes, sounds, and shifts, and she breathed slowly, reaffirming the balance between readiness, composure, and attentiveness, a careful equilibrium maintained in the quiet shared space of the safe house as the evening continued to unfold. Amelia shifted her weight slightly, feeling the subtle presence of someone observing her movements, and she allowed herself a moment to acknowledge the reassurance that came with the measured calm emanating from the figure across the room. The soft illumination from the desk lamp cast gentle light across the polished wood floors, highlighting the neat arrangements she had created, a careful balance of order within a space meant to shelter and protect. She inhaled slowly, the scent of chamomile from her tea mingling with the faint fragrance of the polished surfaces, grounding her awareness and sharpening her focus as she considered the nuances of the environment around her. Each detail mattered. The positioning of the furniture, the angles of light and shadow, the subtle textures of walls and floor, all forming a silent map of her surroundings that informed her perception and anticipation. Amelia's eyes followed a subtle movement near the window, a shadow stretching across the floor as the figure shifted slightly, and she felt a careful tension, not of fear but of alert attentiveness, a readiness to respond with observation and calm action if necessary. She allowed herself to assess the space again, noting the placement of personal items, the arrangement of notes she had written to maintain clarity and composure, and the soft lines of the furniture that created both function and a sense of order. The gentle ticking of the wall clock and the steady hum of the air conditioning provided a rhythmic backdrop, reinforcing the sense of time and continuity as she centered her thoughts and body in the calm awareness she had cultivated. Amelia moved toward the small reading nook near the window, fingers brushing lightly over the edge of the chair as she settled into a poised stance, her gaze sweeping the room in quiet observation, cataloging every detail, sound, and shift in light. The city beyond the windows remained distant but present, the muted glow of streetlights and occasional passing vehicles a subtle reminder that life continued outside the controlled environment of the safe house, and she allowed the steady rhythm of the city to blend with her own measured breathing, reinforcing focus and presence. She reflected on the careful protocols she had internalized, the rehearsed awareness of movement and subtle cues, and she felt a quiet confidence in her ability to interpret and respond appropriately to the environment. Amelia's gaze lingered on the soft folds of her sweater and the familiar texture of the chair beneath her, a tactile reminder of stability amidst the ongoing need for vigilance. She allowed herself a moment to consider the quiet, deliberate observation of the other figure in the room, recognizing in the poised stance and measured steps a silent communication of patience, authority, and comprehension, a presence that mirrored the discipline she had cultivated in herself. Each breath, each subtle movement, each attentive glance formed part of the intricate pattern of awareness that allowed her to remain centered, poised, and ready, balancing the quiet of the safe house with the alertness required to navigate it successfully. Amelia's thoughts circled gently around strategy, observation, and measured response, and she whispered softly to herself, "I notice. I remain steady. I am prepared," the words threading through the calm of the room, reinforcing the equilibrium between awareness, composure, and readiness as the evening continued to unfold in the quiet sanctuary of the safe house. The atmosphere in the safe house shifted subtly as Amelia felt the weight of the moment settle around her, a mixture of anticipation and quiet resolve that permeated the room. The soft glow from the desk lamp illuminated the polished floors and the carefully arranged furniture, casting long, delicate shadows that seemed to move with the flicker of light, highlighting the contrast between order and the underlying tension she had been navigating all evening. Amelia's eyes traced the edges of the room, noting the placement of each object, the gentle curve of the rug, the neat stacks of notes she had prepared, and the soft texture of the curtains, each detail a part of the intricate web of awareness she maintained. Outside, the city lights of Seoul shimmered faintly through the window, a distant, constant reminder of the life moving beyond the walls of the safe house, and she allowed herself a brief pause to center her thoughts, feeling the warmth of the tea still resting near her and the soft hum of the air conditioning as anchors for her focus. Her mind flicked back to the sequence of events that had brought her to this point, the careful instructions, the rehearsed movements, the quiet vigilance that had been her constant companion since arriving, and she recognized the importance of each small action, each deliberate choice in maintaining composure and readiness. Amelia's gaze returned to the subtle figure moving with measured steps across the room, observing without intrusion, and she felt a sense of recognition, the silent acknowledgement of awareness, patience, and understanding that required no words but carried weight in its quiet presence. She allowed herself to breathe slowly, deeply, aligning her inhalation and exhalation with the steady rhythm of the space, grounding her attention in the present and sharpening her perception of every sound, every shift in light, and every minor movement that might reveal additional information. The faint aroma of chamomile and polished wood filled the room, enhancing her ability to focus, and she moved slightly, adjusting her stance to maintain both visibility and comfort, while keeping her body poised for careful observation. Amelia's eyes flicked toward the small personal items she had arranged, the photographs, the neatly stacked books, the notes, and she drew reassurance from the familiarity and order they provided, a quiet affirmation of her ability to manage both environment and emotion with precision. The soft ticking of the wall clock punctuated the stillness, each second marking the continuity of time and reinforcing her awareness of pacing and patience, while the distant city sounds created a subtle, living rhythm that underscored the controlled environment she had established. Amelia allowed herself a moment to consider the balance of presence and observation, the way each element of the room, each sound, each light and shadow, contributed to her understanding and her ability to maintain calm, measured awareness. She moved lightly to adjust a note on the desk, her fingers brushing the smooth surface, a tactile reminder of preparation, and whispered softly to herself, reinforcing the mantra of vigilance and steadiness she had relied on since arriving. As she settled once more, the quiet of the safe house embraced her, a delicate mixture of calm and alertness, with every breath, every glance, and every movement reinforcing the careful equilibrium she had cultivated, allowing her to remain attentive, composed, and ready for whatever revelation or action the unfolding evening might bring. Amelia felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere as Jun Hyuk Lee moved closer, the presence of his quiet authority filling the space with a sense of calm, yet unmistakable attentiveness. The soft glow from the desk lamp illuminated the room, highlighting the polished wooden floors, the neatly arranged personal items, and the subtle reflections on the walls, each detail contributing to the quiet tension and the deliberate observation she maintained. Her eyes followed his measured steps, noting the way he paused briefly to take in the environment, the careful scanning of the furniture, the light angles, and the placement of her notes and personal belongings, all without a word spoken, yet conveying a sense of respect and understanding of the space. The gentle hum of the air conditioning and the distant rhythm of the city outside created a continuous backdrop, reinforcing both her awareness and the steady pace of her breathing as she adjusted her posture, fingers lightly resting on the chair edge. Amelia allowed herself to notice the faint scent of cologne that accompanied him, subtle yet distinct, blending with the soft aroma of chamomile lingering from her tea, grounding her attention and focusing her perception on the interplay of presence, environment, and silent communication. She moved slightly to align her field of vision, ensuring clear observation while maintaining composure, her heartbeat steady as she internalized the unspoken acknowledgement of her preparedness and the shared awareness in the room. Her gaze traveled across the window, noting the distant lights and the soft shadows cast along the floor, each reflection a point of reference in her mental map of the room, contributing to her strategy of observation, patience, and readiness. Amelia's mind raced through the protocols she had internalized, each contingency rehearsed silently in her thoughts, and she allowed the sense of calm control to anchor her as she considered the subtle cues in his movements, the deliberate, almost imperceptible signals of assessment and measured intent. The room's details, the texture of the rug underfoot, the lines of the furniture, the soft folds of her sweater, and the placement of her personal items provided a landscape of familiarity that reinforced her composure and attention to detail. Amelia took a slow sip from her tea, the warmth spreading through her chest, a physical reinforcement of the calm she was cultivating internally as her eyes remained fixed on Jun-hyuk Lee's subtle movements and the careful, quiet observation he maintained. She allowed herself a brief internal acknowledgement of trust in his presence, recognizing the quiet, deliberate manner that conveyed both patience and authority, a mirror to her own cultivated discipline. The soft ticking of the wall clock and the steady hum of the air conditioning offered rhythm and stability, while her eyes continued to track subtle shifts in light and movement, enhancing her awareness and reinforcing the delicate balance of attention and composure. Amelia shifted lightly, adjusting her position near the window, fingers brushing the chair edge for grounding, and allowed a slow, steadying breath to fill her, aligning her senses with the quiet, deliberate presence in the room, acknowledging the unspoken understanding, and reinforcing her own calm readiness as the safe house settled into a shared rhythm of observation, patience, and silent communication. Amelia felt a subtle shift in her emotions as the moments stretched quietly around her, a gentle awareness settling over her that was neither relief nor tension, but a mixture of cautious anticipation and the faint glow of understanding that she was not alone in her vigilance. The soft light from the desk lamp highlighted the textures of the polished wooden floor, the edges of her neatly arranged notes, and the delicate folds of her sweater, each detail anchoring her in the moment while the distant cityscape beyond the window shimmered faintly, the glow of streetlights reflecting softly off glass and metal surfaces and reminding her of the wider world continuing outside the safe house. She took a slow, deliberate sip from the cup of tea that had cooled slightly in its warm ceramic vessel, letting the subtle aroma of chamomile fill her senses and provide a grounding presence amidst the quiet hum of anticipation. Amelia's gaze followed the faint movements of Jun-hyuk Lee across the room, noting the careful precision of his steps, the measured pauses that suggested both observation and thought, and the subtle way he adjusted his posture in response to the spatial dynamics of the room, an unspoken communication of attention and awareness that required no words but conveyed a quiet reassurance. She allowed her eyes to scan the room again, noting the interplay of light and shadow across furniture and walls, the positioning of personal items she had placed with deliberate care, and the subtle reflections on the polished surfaces that offered constant points of reference to orient her perception. The gentle ticking of the wall clock punctuated the stillness, a steady rhythm that reinforced her awareness of time and presence, while the faint hum of the air conditioning provided a constant background that helped her maintain focus and clarity in her observations. Amelia shifted slightly to adjust her position in the chair, letting her hands brush lightly along the armrest, a tactile reinforcement of composure and readiness, and she took a measured breath, centering herself and allowing her senses to absorb every minor detail in the space around her. Her thoughts moved fluidly between the assessment of her environment and the silent acknowledgement of the figure in the room, recognizing the balance of authority, patience, and attentiveness that mirrored the discipline she had cultivated in herself. She allowed her mind to review the protocols and practices she had internalized, the mental rehearsal of potential scenarios, and the deliberate attention to cues both subtle and pronounced that informed her actions and responses. The soft glow of the lamp highlighted the edges of photographs and personal mementos she had placed throughout the safe house, each one a reminder of stability, familiarity, and her careful cultivation of calm within the controlled space. Amelia's breathing remained steady, each inhalation and exhalation a quiet meditation that reinforced awareness, presence, and the careful calibration of her attention, while her gaze continued to track the measured movements across the room, noting the subtle interactions of light, shadow, and space. She whispered softly to herself, an internal affirmation of composure and readiness. I am aware. I am steady. I am present. The words threading through the quiet atmosphere of the safe house, reinforcing the equilibrium of vigilance, understanding, and calm as the evening unfolded, allowing her to remain composed, attentive, and assured within the deliberate and measured environment they both inhabited. Amelia shifted slightly in her chair, the soft cushion beneath her providing a subtle comfort as she took in the quiet rhythm of the safe house around her, the polished wooden floors reflecting the gentle glow from the desk lamp in a way that made every surface feel precise and deliberate. Her eyes moved across the room, tracing the lines of the furniture, the edges of her neatly stacked notes, and the small personal touches she had arranged to maintain a sense of normalcy and control, each element reinforcing her awareness and grounding her in the present. The faint hum of the air conditioning filled the background along with the distant, soft sounds of the city outside, a reminder that life continued beyond the walls she had made familiar, and she allowed herself a slow, measured breath to center her thoughts and bring clarity to her senses. Her gaze lingered briefly on the window, the distant lights casting subtle reflections across the surfaces of the room, and she felt a gentle steadiness in the knowledge that she had prepared for each moment with careful observation, thought, and deliberate intention. Amelia's fingers brushed lightly against the armrest of the chair, tracing the texture of the wood as her mind reviewed the details she had cataloged throughout the day, the small reminders she had left for herself, and the awareness she had cultivated through measured focus, all of which contributed to a growing sense of calm and composure. She shifted slightly to adjust her position, ensuring she had an optimal view of the room while maintaining the comfort and grounding provided by the familiarity of her surroundings, the soft folds of her sweater, and the subtle scent of chamomile from her tea offering a reassuring presence as she settled into a poised attentiveness. The gentle ticking of the wall clock marked the passage of time, each second reinforcing her awareness and the rhythm she had established in the safe house, allowing her to remain alert while sustaining a sense of calm composure. Amelia allowed her eyes to drift across the room again, taking note of the subtle interplay of light and shadow, the precise arrangement of objects, and the faint reflections on polished surfaces, all elements contributing to the mental map she had constructed to maintain situational awareness and thoughtful preparedness. Her thoughts moved fluidly between the immediate details of the room and the broader understanding of her environment, recognizing the quiet balance between observation and internal reflection that had become second nature in the controlled space. She focused on the deliberate movements of her own body, the gentle shift of her weight in the chair, the soft alignment of her hands and posture, and the steady rhythm of her breathing, all contributing to a sense of centered presence and readiness for whatever unfolded next. Amelia allowed a small, private acknowledgement of her own resilience to surface, appreciating the careful cultivation of patience, awareness, and deliberate attention that had brought her to this point, a quiet affirmation that even within the stillness and measured calm of the safe house, she maintained control, clarity, and an enduring sense of preparedness that sustained her through the unfolding evening. Amelia allowed herself a quiet exhale, feeling the culmination of the evening's careful attention settle like a gentle weight across her shoulders, a mixture of relief and reflective awareness that marked the end of a series of measured actions and observations. The soft glow from the desk lamp bathed the room in a warm, steady light, highlighting the polished wooden floors, the neatly arranged furniture, and the personal items she had strategically placed to maintain a sense of order and familiarity, each element reinforcing her confidence and sense of control within the safe house. Her gaze lingered on the window, the distant city lights shimmering like small constellations against the night sky, a reminder of the world continuing beyond the walls of her temporary refuge, and of the calm she had cultivated despite the uncertainty that had filled the hours prior. Amelia shifted slightly in her seat, adjusting her posture to feel grounded and alert, while simultaneously embracing the subtle relaxation that came from completing the series of deliberate observations and mindful responses. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint ticking of the wall clock created a gentle rhythm that she synchronized with her breathing, each inhalation and exhalation reinforcing a state of awareness, composure, and quiet resilience. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, tracing the lines of the furniture, the edges of her notes, and the gentle contours of her personal mementos, each detail a testament to her preparation and capacity to maintain equilibrium in the midst of complex circumstances. Amelia felt a faint but steady sense of accomplishment as she reflected on her ability to remain composed, vigilant, and attentive, the internal dialogue of preparedness and careful observation providing a quiet reassurance that she had managed each challenge with clarity and purpose. The gentle light created soft shadows,